Hello everyone, and welcome to Chapter 13 in the Introduction to Python course. This is the final chapter that we'll be covering, and in this chapter we'll be covering GUI programming, or specifically Graphical User Interface Programming. So specifically in this chapter, we'll be covering what a graphical user interface is, how we can do that in Python using the tkinter module, how we can display text using the label widget through tkinter, how we can organize widgets with frames, how we can actually create button widgets and info dialog pop-up boxes, how we can get input with entry widgets, how we can use labels as output fields, and how we can get radio buttons, check buttons, and then finally, similar to what we did before with the turtle, we can talk about how we can draw shapes with the canvas widget directly onto these actual graphical user interfaces. So what is a graphical user interface? So this entire time, we've made graphical user interfaces of a sort. Specifically, the user interface that we have is just how the person or the user interacts with the actual computer they're working with. So in our case before, we've been using what's called a command line interface, or CLI. This is just a prompt that then displays to the user what type, what it wants, right? So the user types a command, that command that executes, and then that command comes back asking the user for more information. They enter it, it continues to execute. Well, graphical user interface allows the user to actually interact with a problem through a graphical element on a screen. So for instance, the screen we're looking at right now is a graphical user interface. As you can see in PowerPoint, I have all these different buttons up here that I can click on. I have all these other options up here at the very top with insert, draw, design, transition. That's a graphical user interface, okay? So in the Windows operating system, we see graphical user interfaces in the form of dialog boxes. Now, dialog box is just a small window that we've all seen when working with Windows, with the Windows operating system, that displays information and allows us to perform actions. So for instance, the PowerPoint graphical user interface is technically one giant dialog box. When we open up a setting on a computer, that's also a dialog box. For instance, if I go to the About for this Mac here, you'll see that this is a dialog box right here. So that's the same thing. So again, the dialog boxes are just responsible for most of the interactions we see through GUI. So an example here, you could click on general, security, privacy, content, connections, and so on. We have things like custom levels. We can click apply or OK. We can do different things with these dialog boxes. So the big thing to keep in mind with graphical user interfaces or GUI programs is that they're event-driven. What this means is that in a text-based CLI environment, we choose what happens next in the program through the programmatic behavior, which means that the user calls the program, then the program does something. If the program needs something else from the user, it'll ask for it, specifically that, and the user provides it, and then the program continues. Within GUI programs, these environments are event-driven, which means if we go back to this dialog box here, we don't know which button the user is going to click first. So specifically, they could click general first, they could click security, they could click privacy, they could hit cancel right off the bat, they could hit custom levels, they could drag the slider, they could click this checkbox. All of those are things that could happen, and they can happen in any order. In the CLI environment, we choose the order. With the GUI environment, we have to react or respond to what the user does. So what this means is it's no longer going to be a step-by-step-by-step program anymore. It's going to be triggers. So what that basically means is that there's going to be a listener that listens for these events, and then these events then trigger a function or section of code to run. So we'll see that here in a little bit. So Python does not inherently have a GUI programming feature. What that means is Python is a CLI or command line or text-based programming language that the user normally interacts with that. However, we can do GUI programming through Python using the tkinter module, and that gives us access to GUI programming. So tkinter allows us to create just simple GUI programs, and it does come standard with the Python installation, but we will need to import it, just like the math library, just like the turtle library, and so on. Now in tkinter, the entirety of it is all based around what are called widgets. If you imagine a cell phone where you can drag a calendar widget around, you can drag a clock widget, any kind of other app widgets as well. Those widgets are things you can interact with. So tkinter is based on the same idea of widgets. There are things that we can put onto the GUI interface display, and then the user can interact with those as they see fit in whatever order they want, okay? So the idea behind these include things like buttons, text, like text fields or labels, messages, like message boxes, radio buttons and check buttons as well. And we'll go through all of these as well. So in Tkinter, here's just a few of the different widgets they have. So like we were saying, we have buttons, we have the canvas, which allows us to draw shapes. We have the check buttons and the radio buttons, which makes sense. Those are check boxes and radio buttons you normally would see. We have entry, which allows us to type in information. We have frames that allow us to actually organize the widgets. We'll see that in a little bit. We have a label, which is just a one line of text or an image. We have a list box, which allows them to select from a list of different things. So you can imagine maybe a country, and there's a list box. You can scroll down in the box and click your country, but you can only click one. You have a menu, which just does menu choices. You have a menu button that goes along with the menu. You have messages to display multiple lines. You have scale, scroll bar, text, and so on. But we're going to be covering a few of these right in this actual section. So to actually use Tkinter, is one thing to note is that if you are using the idle programming environment that comes with Python, don't. Tkinter does not work the best through this environment, and instead, when you write this program, you can write it in the idle and programming environment still, but when you go to run it, you will either want to use the terminal directly, you want to use the command prompt, or you want to use other programming IDEs such as PyCharm or Visual Studio Code. All right, so when we're building these actual these GUIs, we're going to be using an object-oriented approach when writing them, which means that we're going to make a class. And in this class, the form, or the actual GUI, is going to be written inside of the class's init method. And then once we actually call that actual class, an instance of that GUI is then going to be created and appear on the screen. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a blank GUI interface. Because before we can actually move on to actually adding things to the GUI, we need some kind of foundational interface, a canvas or a blank slate, if you will, that we can then add stuff to. So to do this, we're going to be using these two commands here. So we'll see this if we come over here. We're going to say the first step is going to be import Tkinter, and we're going to make this a little bit shorter to actually simplify our code as TK, just like that. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to do class, because we're making a class, and we're going to call it my GUI, just like that. And at the end, we're going to say app equals my GUI with the parentheses after it. This is going to create an instance of this class and then allow us to call the class down here. Now you'll notice here we do not need a if name. We don't need the if name equals main like this time around, because usually when you're working with these actual GUIs, you won't actually be using a GUI in tandem with another file. Now, if you want to do this, or if you ever feel like you will need to use a GUI with something else and call that GUI from another file, you're more than welcome to do the if name equals main and then do a def main. So you could do something like if name equals main. You could do this line just like this. You can also do def main as well, just like that. And then you can put this code right here and then do main as well. Now, again, like I said, you don't really need this logic here. You can either just take the app, like we said, and put it directly under that because there's only one line being called, or you can take this line out entirely. So I'll take it out entirely, but if you want to, just keep in mind, if you're going to call it from another file, have the if name equals main. All right, so now that we have our general GUI, the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need to have our init. This init function is where we're going to actually build our form. So the first thing we're going to do, if you come back over here, you'll see you're going to create our window. So we're going to do self, because we're in the class, dot main window equals tk, because that's our library up here we have as tk, dot t, capital T, k, just like that. So what that's going to do is this right here is going to create the GUI window. Now, if we run this, you'll see that nothing shows up. The only reason that nothing is showing up is because we need this second line right here. Okay, this is the main loop. So the first one creates the window. The second line right here, the window.main loop, specifically how we'll actually write it in this class is going to write it as tk. So we'll say tk.main loop, just like that. And what this line is going to do is it's going to listen for events and keep the form open, actually keep the window open until we close it. So this is listening. So we'll say start listening for events. Okay. So if we run that now, you'll see we now have a basic form. This is all we have, okay? There's nothing on it, but now we have a window. You'll see that this will stay open until I hit X, in which case it says program finished. Because this is an infinite loop right here that checks for events that occur. And once an event occurs, it will then actually process it and continue the loop back and keep listening for more. All right, so now that we have our blank interface, again, this stuff will never change. You always need to have your main window. You always have to have your main loop just like this. You'll call your GUI at the bottom with the 2 parentheses afterwards, and you'll make a class and an init just like this. Okay? So after we have that, again, this just sort of shows the more breakdown. Again, like I said, we import it, we create the class, we have the init, we have the main loop, we call it. Okay? So after we do that, the next thing we can do is we can actually display text onto it with the label widget. So what we're going to do is we'll come over here, and everything you write in this GUI will happen between this line and this line. So we're going to put that down. That's going to be the last line in your init. This will be the first line. So in here, we're going to go ahead and display some text to the GUI window, just like that. And we're going to go ahead and just display hello world. So we'll say hello label. So we'll put self in front of it. So we'll do self. Let's just say hello equals that, like that. And we'll say tk dot label. And we're going to tell it which window or frame it goes in. So we'll say self dot main window, which means we want it in that main window. And we want the text to be equal to hello world, just like that. All right, so now if I run this, you'll see nothing happens. So the question is, why did nothing appear? We have the label right here. We say it goes in the main window. The reason for that is because for every widget you put to the screen, you need to do what's called packing it. You need to pack the widget, which then tells to Tkinter and Python where that widget should be positioned on the screen, and it makes it visible on the screen as well. So what we're going to do is we can do something like self.hello.pack, just like that. And inside of here, if I run this now, you'll see we now have hello world. It's very small, like that, because the box will now go around whatever is currently inside of it. Okay? So now what we can do, though, is we see it as I pull it around. You see that pack defaults to the top middle. Okay? If I say side equals, and I say, let's say bottom, and I run this again, it looks the same until I drag it out, and now it's in the bottom middle. Okay? If I say left, you can imagine that it looks the same until I drag it out, and it's in the left, but it's in the left middle. So it's the side of the actual window that you want it connected to. So if I say right now, and I run that, you'll see the same thing like you expect. It's on the right side in the middle of that window. Okay? So we have all those different pack options. There are other options as well, but again, this is the idea behind the pack, right? So on top of this, we can also, let's go ahead and put another widget down as well. So we'll put another piece of text. So we'll copy this code, and we'll put it right below it. So we'll say hello world, and we'll say welcome, or we'll say something like you are nearing the end of this class. Something like that. If I run this now, I got to change the name here. So we'll say this one is comment. We'll say comment here as well. Make sure you have that the same like that. And if I run this, let's go ahead and let's put them back to top on both. Let's say top here. Let's say top here. And if I run that, you'll see we say hello world. You are nearing the end of this class. If I drag it out, you'll see they're both together in the top middle. Now, if I change one of these to, let's say we've changed them both to left, and you'll use this a lot. If I change both of them to left, you'll now see it says hello world and you're in this class, and it puts them on the same line on the left. Okay? If I change one of them to top and one of them to left, you'll see it says this, and that one's at the top towards the middle of where it's at, and this is in that left area. Okay? It's not in the direct center because this left area exists, but it is like this. Okay? Same thing as before. If I do bottom, this will go there. If I do top here, it'll also do that just like that. Okay, so one's at the top, one's at the bottom. If I flip them, we'll say bottom, and I'll say top here. Then we'll see that they do flip, and that one's at the top, and that one's at the bottom. Okay, now the order here does matter. So if I have them both top like that, but I move this pack below the other one, you'll see that the second one is now above the first one. This is because this pack command here for the second one is now occurring before this one. So this one gets priority to being closer to the top. So make sure that you are doing your packs in the right order so that the actual items that appear, your labels, your entries, your buttons, everything else go in the correct order on the screen. Okay? Now, one other thing I want to cover, Pack has some other options as well, and one that I definitely want to show you guys. It's what's called the, it's the pad command. So you'll have pad. If you do pad, you'll see pad X and pad Y. And if you want to space some things, this is how you'll do it. So let's say we have top and top, and we're going to put some space between them. So we'll do pad Y, and we'll give it some number. Okay? So let's give it a number of 10. And if I run that now, you'll see that there's space on the top and bottom of it, and there's no space below the other one. So if I do pad on the next one as well, with pad Y, you'll see that now both of them have space on the top and bottom of each other. This is 10 space, that's a 10 spacing on the top and the bottom one as well. So that right there will give you the general information you need to actually pad it. The last thing I want to show you guys is for the label ones. Again, by the way, just keep in mind you have pad X as well. So if I do 10 here, you'll see it will give me more space on the sides. If I do it, it'll be more obvious if I do it on this one. Say 20. So you'll see the window has got 20 space here and 20 space here because the window is to this actual size. Now the last thing I want to show you guys is also how you can change the font size and font text. So if I do font like this, actually don't do it inside of the pack, but you do it actually inside of the actual label itself. You do font equals, and then here you can put some parentheses as a tuple and do the first one being the actual font, so we'll say Arial, and the second one being the font size, so we can do 25. Okay, if I run that now, you'll see that now we have Hello World and a font size 25 with Arial, and this is the standard text size here. So again, this is how you can play around the label. Obviously, as you see, if I comma here, you'll see all the different options that occur with this. You have all of these different options that you have. So go dive into it if you want to, dive into it, see what options you have, see what things you can do with the labels as well. But this is just to get you guys started. So again, we've shown you guys what the labels are. We've shown you guys the packing. So again, if you actually were to see this, if you were to do the different packing on each of the sides, you have your top, your bottom, left, and right, just like we talked about. And with that being said, we've talked about padding, but let's say we want to have a few different things. So let's say we want to have a few different options, and we can organize them with frames. So frames are, imagine they're just invisible boxes that allow us to organize different things. So for instance, if I wanted to have, let's say, a few different things. So let's say I want to have self, and we'll say label 1 equals, and we'll grab this information right here. And we'll say this text right here is actually just considered label 1, just like that. And we'll go ahead and just do self.label1.pack, and we'll just keep it very simple packing this time. We won't use anything crazy. All right, so let's say I wanted to have that, but let's say I wanted to do a few different labels. I wanted those 3 to be up and down, and I wanted these 3 to be side to side. So if I wanted 1, 2, and 3, I'll have 4, 5, and 6. And I want to have these ones right here be 1, 2, and 3. So these 3 right here will be up and down. So we say side equals top, like that. Again, remember it defaults top, so we don't have to do this, but I'm just doing this for visibility's sake here. And then these 3 right here, we want them to be side by side. So we'll do side equals left for these 3 as well. So we'll say side equals left, side equals left, side equals left, like that. So now we have, these should be label, should go label 1, label 2, label 3, and label 4, 5, 6 beside each other. Now when I run that, you'll see that this is what we have, right? But look, it does not stay the way we want it. This is off to the side. It looks nice like this, but when I start to pull it, That's not really what we want. So what we can do is we can use what's called frames to actually organize this so it actually works correctly. So for instance, if we want to do that same thing, we have these three words, wink and blink and nod. We can make two frames. We'll make a top frame and a bottom frame. And instead of these labels being in self.main_window now, they'll be self.top frame. That's the frame that they're in. So we'll have these three in top frame, and we'll have these three in bottom frame. And then we'll have top for the top three and left for the other ones. Just like with widgets, you do need to pack the frames you add to. And if we were to run this, you'll see we have wink and blink and nod, and then wink and blink and nod. So if we do that over here, you'll see we go ahead and create two frames. We'll say self.topFrame equals tk.frame self.main_window. And we'll say self.bottomFrame equals tk.frame self.main_window, just like that. Now what we'll do is we'll change these three from main window to top frame. And we'll change these three to bottom frame. Now, if we run this now, you'll notice that nothing appears. So the reason nothing is appearing here is because, again, even though we've packed our widgets, we never packed, or we should say we pack our frames as well. So we need to do self.topFrame.pack. We'll do self.bottomFrame.pack, just like that. Now if I run that, you'll see we have this, and now it stays together correctly. It looks good no matter how big the window gets, because now you have, if I come back here, you have one frame that's an imaginary box that holds these three that spans the entirety of the container, and it's in the middle. This one expands the entire middle, but these three inside of it are left, but the box, the actual bottom frame, is in this top center still because we never put anything. If I were to say side equals bottom here, and side equals bottom here, like that, then what we would find is that it looks the same, but now this is flipped. Why is that? So if you look at the actual this here, you'll see that it does what we want, is now they're both on the bottom, but now the top frame is below the bottom frame. It's because we gave priority to the top frame to be on the bottom, so it's the closest to the bottom. If we wanted to fix that, we would need to flip these like that. And now it looks correct, but now it's all on the bottom middle of that right there. So that's what we're looking at doing. If I do left here as well, can you imagine what would happen? It's not going to be on top of each other now. It's now going to be like this, because again, there's the bottom one has been put to left first, and then the top one. If we want to switch that around again, we can switch this side with that side. And now we have this. So the top frame is these three, the bottom frame is these three, and they're both stacked to the left. Again, what we wanted in this case, we'll put top on both. And this is the actual output we wanted, and we now have that. So when working with GUIs, you're going to have to play around with actually modifying, editing, and changing around the actual padding or the packing, the sides, the padding, everything like that to get what you want. It's going to be a trial and error kind of thing. You'll learn of new features as you go, but again, this will get you started. All right, so now that we know how to do labels, we need to use buttons. Okay, so again, we can put text out, but we want to actually interact with the user. So we'll use what's called button widgets and info dialog boxes. Now, button widgets are just widgets that the user can click. It's just a button that you know of normally. Again, if I click on a button like up here, these are all buttons that I can click with that'll do different things. So the button widget here is just a widget that can that actually causes an event to take place. So when a button is called, well, when we create a button, we need to put the text on the button and also have a callback function. Now, a callback function is just the function or method in the class that executes when the user clicks on the button. It's also known as an event handler. So what we can do is we can just say right here, click me, that's the button. And we can have a function called do something. So for instance, if I come over here, and let's keep the top frame and bottom frame, and we'll get rid of all these labels but one. So we'll say label 1 is now going to say this is the button, like that. And below it, we're going to say self.button equals tk.button. We'll tell it what frame to go in, and we'll put this one in the bottom frame. the text here is going to equal click me. And then we have a command. Now the command, we don't have any commands now. So what we'll need to do is, just like we've done before in classes where we have class methods, we'll go below main loop and we'll put it in line with this def in it. So here we'll see it's in line now, and we'll do def button func for button function. We'll put some parentheses, and now we have our button function. So in this case, we'll just say print the button was clicked, just like that. And where we see command now, we can go back up there and do self dot button func. Now you'll notice if I do that, it's erroring. You see right here, it says expected type string function, any, got none instead. What we need to do for this to actually work is, you see these last two parentheses here, you're going to take them off. What that becomes now is that is a pointer or a reference to a function. So when the command is called, it'll say button func self, the button was clicked, just like that. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. We run this again. You'll start to see there's a recurring theme. Where is the button? Where is the button here? The button again is not there because we never packed the button. We need to do self.button.pack. We'll just do that because again, that's going to default to top. So we don't need this here either because it's going to default to top middle. And now if I run that, we now say this is the button, click me. Okay, click the button. You'll see it says the button was clicked down here. But again, the output terminal is not what the user is normally going to see. So again, I can click this as many times as I want and it'll come down here. But we want to be able to show the user who has access to the GUI up here what this actually is doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to use another thing called an info dialog box. This is basically just your pop-up box that'll show some information when it pops up. So what we're going to do is down here, we're going to use a new thing, but before we do, we have to import it. So we're going to do import tkinter.messagebox as tm, just like that. And instead of saying the button is clicked, now we're going to do tm.showInfo, like that. The first thing is going to be the title that you'll see in Microsoft Word, and in Macs you don't really see it, but in Microsoft Word it'll be the title of the actual box that actually pops up. So we'll say you clicked the button. And the second thing is going to be the text that is found inside of the text, inside of the message box. So we'll say you clicked it, like that. All right, so if we run this now, we don't have to pack the show info. So now we have this. If I click this, it'll now say you clicked it. This text, you click the button, would appear at the top side of the window if this were a Windows computer. So if I click it again, it'll say you clicked it, and so on. So there's different options as well. There's show info, there's show error. So if I run that, oop, wrong one, hold on. Kill that real quick. We'll run that again. So now it says you clicked it again. And what happens is on a Windows machine, if you do show error, it'll show a little red X box or like X ball. If you say show warning, it'll show a little yellow warning sign. And if you do show info, it does a little exclamation point for information. Okay? So you have all those different options. And now that we have this, if we run the actual prompt here, it says click me. And there it is. So I click the button. So every time I click this button, this code down here in button func is run. Now we see that right here, we have this little TK here, and this box is really small. So what we can actually do to fix this is we can go up here, and we can actually resize the window and add a window title. So we'll do self.mainWindow.geometry. And in here, we'll put a string that is going to be the dimensions of pixel width. So we'll do, let's say, a 200 by 200 box. And then we'll do self.mainWindow.title. And then we'll put in here a string that we want the actual box to say. So we'll say click, or we'll say button clicker, like that. Right? So if we run that now, you'll see at the top it says button clicker now. You see the box is bigger by default now. We just have button clicker up here, and this says this is the button. If we hit click me, it now clicks. So this is a better user interface already. Okay, so now at this point, we know about, if you see right here, we have our button, we have our message box. This is what it looks like as you just saw. we now have buttons, we have info dialog boxes. One special type of button I do want to go over though is the quit button. So the quit button just closes the program. It's just like the cancel box, cancel button, anything. That's like the X or this little red X up here, or like the regular X over here on a Windows computer. It just quits the program. So what we're going to do to create that is we're going to come over here where we have click me, and beside it we're going to do self.quit equals tk.button self.bottom frame. We want to put it beside the other button. We'll do text, and we'll put quit. The command in this case, though, we won't build a function for it because what we're going to do is we're going to use the self.mainWindow.destroy. Again, take away the last two parentheses. And what this is going to do is this main widget right here, this main window widget, the root widget, actually has a method called destroy, which will close the root widget because it will destroy that code and everything inside of it. So now that we have that, we need to make sure we pack it. So we'll do self.button.pack. And now we'll do side equals left for both of them. So we'll do side equals left there. We'll do side equals left here to put them side by side. And if I run that now, we now have click me right there. But again, we didn't change this right here, so we changed that to quit. And run it again. And now we have click me and quit. So if I click me, it says you clicked it. If I hit quit, it closes the window and finishes the program. So make sure you understand how to do a regular button that calls a function that you built and a quit button that calls the main Windows destroy method. All right, so at this point, we know how to make two buttons. This is, again, another example of a quit button here for you. So if I were to ask you the question of what is an event-driven program, you could then say users cause events to occur, and that determines the order the program responds. So if I asked you, what does the Tkinter module's main loop function do? You could say it listens for events until the window is closed or the program terminates. If I ask you, what does a widget's pack method do? You could say it determines where a widget should be positioned and makes it visible. If I ask you what a callback function is, you should be able to say that it is a function that executes when a user clicks a button. And if I ask you how does a quit button end the GUI program, you should know that it calls the root widget or the self.mainWindows destroy method. Okay? So let's go ahead and try one of these together. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a GUI program that displays a dialog box with information on your favorite celebrity. That's going to then include the celebrity's name, age, and what they're most known for, and their celebrity rating out of 10. Our GUI program should include a show info button as well as a quit button that destroys the GUI application when clicked. So let's go ahead and work on this. So right now you'll see here that I have imported, let me go ahead and zoom this in real quick. There we go. So I've imported both the Tkinter module and the message box as TK and TM. I have a class started called Celebrity GUI. I have the init method already here with everything right there where it's supposed to be. And I have app equals Celebrity GUI at the bottom so that when I run this, this code will actually run. So the first thing we need to do, just like always, is we need to create our GUI window. So we're going to do self.mainWindow, main window, like that, equals tk lowercase dot capital TK to create the actual window. Then we're going to go ahead and solve this other problem, which is to start listening for events, which is tk, the module library, dot main loop. All right, so if I run this now, we have the basis of a blank window, which is what we want. Let's go ahead and spice up the actual main window here so we can go ahead and resize it. So we'll resize the window and add a window title here. So we'll do self.mainWindow.geometry and we'll just make this a 300 by 100. And then we'll go ahead and do the title as self.mainWindow.title, and that's going to be the celebrity information. Okay, so if I run that now, you'll see we have celebrity information and the box has changed shape. Okay, so we're off to a good start. So if you notice, we're going to need to have a title that just says what celebrity we're talking about, as well as a show info and a quit button. So what that sounds like is we're going to need two different frames. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create those frames now. So we'll say create two internal frames. So it's going to be self.topFrame equals tk.frame, and we're going to associate that with the main window because that's the one it goes in. And then we're going to say self.bottomFrame equals tk.frame of self.main window again. So both of those are going in the main window. And now we can go ahead and create our title label. So here we're going to say self.title label equals tk.label. And then we'll put that in the top frame. And now we have to ask ourselves what celebrity we want to do the information on. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and just do mine on Bill Murray because he's a funny guy and he's been around for a while. So we'll say Bill Murray information. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and make it a title. So we'll say font equals, and we'll say Arial 25. Okay. We'll go ahead and make sure to pack this as well, but we'll go ahead and just pack this here. So we'll do self, title label dot pack like that. We'll put it in the main middle. And then we can go ahead and create our info and quit buttons as well. Okay. So I'll go ahead and zoom out just a little bit here so everybody can see what we're looking at here. So again, we have our GUI up here. Everything's being built. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create our two buttons. So what we're going to do is we're going to do self.info equals, well, I should do info btn so we know it's a button. And then we'll say equals tk.button. We'll do self.bottomFrame. We'll do the text is click here to learn more. You can do that. You can do show info, whatever you want to do. And then we'll have the command equal self.celeb info. Now there's not going to be a function so far, so it's going to complain, but we'll just leave that for now. We'll handle that here in a second. And we'll go ahead and create the other button as well. So we'll do self.quitBTN equals tk.button self.bottomFrame. Text equals quit. And then we'll say command equals self.mainWindow.destroy. Just like that. So that button's good. All right, so now that we've done that, we'll go ahead and pack these two buttons. So we'll do self.info_button.pack. And again, we want this one to be on the left of the other one, so we'll say side equals left. And then we'll do the same thing here. So we'll do self.quitButton.pack side equals left, just like that. And those two buttons are good. So now that we've done that, we want to go ahead and pack our frame widgets at the bottom here. So we'll do self.topFrame, not title, we'll topFrame.pack, and we'll do self.bottomFrame.pack as well, just like that. All right, so we have our main loop now. So before we run this, we need to work on actually the celeb info function. Don't forget that. So we'll do def celeb info. And now you'll see that this turns off, so it's actually valid now. And then we'll do tm.showInfo. And we'll say Bill Murray information. The name is going to be William James Murray. We use a \n to do a new line. We'll say age, he's 72. We'll say known for, we'll say Ghostbusters, and we'll say, let's go ahead and do the next line here. So we'll say and National Lampoon. Lampoon. Keep going. We'll say celebrity rating, and we'll just go ahead and give them a 10 out of 10. Okay. All right, so you can do whatever celebrity you want, but this will give you the basis. So now that we have this done, we'll go ahead and run this. And now we see we have Bill Murray information with celebrity information here at the top. We can go ahead and click here to learn more. We have name, William James Murray, age is 72, known for Ghostbusters and National Lampoon, and the celebrity rating is 10 out of 10. So we hit OK. We can do it again if we wanted to. We can hit quit. And that'll quit the program, and now it's finished. So we've now built a basic GUI with just information. So what I want you guys to do now is take the moment, pause the video, and write a GUI program that can actually display info on your three favorite songs using dialog boxes and buttons. So your GUI program should include 3 buttons that when clicked, display a dialog box that includes information on one of your 3 favorite songs, with each dialog box including the song title, artist, genre, and release year. And your GUI should also have a button that destroys the GUI application when clicked, which is your quit button. So go ahead and pause the program and give this one a shot, and unpause it when you're ready to see the answer. All right, did you give that a shot on your own? If not, let's go ahead and go over it real quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off again with our Tkinter module and our message box. In that, after that, we're going to go ahead and create our class. It was called a SongInfo GUI with an init or app equals SongInfo GUI at the bottom with the 2 parentheses, and we're ready to start. So the first thing again we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create our GUI window. So we'll do self.main window. Oop, not that again. Main window. No. Window equals tk.tk. And then we'll go ahead and resize it and everything just like before. So we'll do resize the window and add the window title. So we'll do self.mainWindow.geometry. We'll say it's let's say 250 by 250. We'll do self.mainWindow.title. And that's going to be the favorite song information. Then we need to go actually and add our songs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull my information in here. You can pull whatever songs you want in, but I'm going to use these 3 right here. So my 3 right here are going to have their dictionaries with a title, artist, genre, and year. And I have ones from Metallica, AC/DC, and Aerosmith. Again, you can use whichever ones you want, but this will get us started with the information. All right, so now that we have our information, we're going to go ahead and create buttons for each song and pack them. So what we're going to find out here is that all these buttons should do something really similar. So if I do something like self.button1 equals tk.button self.mainWindow, because we don't really need a frame here because they're just going to be up and down on top of each other. We'll say the text here is going to be the first one, which is going to be enter Sandman. And then we'll say command equals, and we'll come back to that. We'll go ahead and do the next button as well. So we'll go ahead and pack that first. We'll do self.button1.pack. And we'll add a little bit of Y padding here just to space them out a little bit. We'll do the next button. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this code 3 times, just like that. The next one here is going to be the next title of your song, which is going to be Back in Black. And then we have Dream 1 down here. Okay. Make sure you change these from button 1s to button 2s, just like that. Button 3 right here. So now we have our 3 buttons. Make sure again you start listening for events down here. So we'll do tk.mainLoop. And now we have to ask ourselves our question about how we want to actually go ahead and show this info. So we'll do def show song info. And now we have 3 different things that are all going to do the exact same thing. So instead of making a separate functions for all of them, we'll want to take in the song that we want. So we'll do that. And then we might want to do something along the lines of, let's say, tm.showInfo. We'll say song information. And then what we'll do is we'll have something that's we'll just use an F string here to do title with the actual song. So we'll do title where we have song bracket title because it's a dictionary. Then in quotes here, title, like that. Then after that, we'll put a \n. We'll put, let's say, what's this error here? Ooh, I should put this in single quotes actually, so this actually works. There we go. We have our title. We'll have something, let's say, artist, with again the curly braces where we have song bracket single quote artist, the \n. And then we'll do genre with the curly braces with song bracket genre \n, and then we'll do year. with the curly braces, song, bracket, year, just like that. And now we have that. So this is just an F-string approach. Again, you can do it the other way as well. We're just pulling all the information in from the dictionary that we have. Now the thing is, we need to be able to pass our dictionary. So let's go to button 1 and we'll do self dot show song info. Now here we might want to do something like, let's say song self dot song 1. But as you can see, we can't do that because again, we can't put the parentheses after it. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to use something called a lambda function. So what we'll do is we'll say a lambda right out front, and we'll put a colon, and then we'll do self dot show song info with song 1. Now you'll see it doesn't break anymore. The reason this is because while this right here is a function call, we need a function reference point. Well, lambda here is an anonymous function. This anonymous function is actually wrapping this function call. So now we have a function reference that just calls this singular line. So that makes it work for us. So we'll take that. If you want to know more about lambda functions, go ahead and look them up yourself. But again, they're very useful. We'll say song 1, song 2, and song 3 right here. And now we have our code that actually works. So what we can do now is if we run this, we say enter Sandman, we click that. We have a title, artist, genre, and year. We have Back in Black, we have that, we have artist, rock, and year. And then we have Dream On, which have all that. And the only thing we're missing now, though, is a quit button. So we'll have to go ahead and create that. So we'll do self.quit btn equals tk.button, self.main window, text equals, let's say, quit. And the command, again, is always going to be self.mainWindow.destroy, just like that. So again, we'll go ahead and actually pack that. So we'll do self.quitButton.pack. And we'll go ahead and give that some extra padding as well. Now if we run that, actually, let's go ahead and actually put this on the bottom too. So we can do cell, or not self, but side equals bottom pad y. All right, so if I run that now, we'll see we have a separate button for quit. And if we quit that, now we have it closed. All right, so now we've actually built this actual GUI window to actually show our 3 favorite songs. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and move on now. So now we know how to do text, we know how to do pop-up dialog boxes, and now we also know how to do buttons. So the next step we're going to work on is getting input and putting out output from the user. So to do this, we're going to use what's called an entry widget. The entry widget is what we're going to use to actually type text into it, and it usually follows a label widget, which tells you what to type in, and is followed by a button, which then that calls code that then uses the text that they typed in. Now, when you're actually calling that, we're using that entry, we're going to use the entry widget's get method, which will allow us to retrieve data from an entry widget. Again, keep in mind though that this, just like with input, will return a string, so we will need to cast it before we can use it. So here's an example of that. We have our main window. Again, we have tkinter.tk. We have our top frame, bottom frame. We have our label, which is enter our distance in kilometers. We say kilo enter, which we have right here, which is our entry. We say pack left, so we have them both, so it'll be side by side. Then we have our calculation button on the bottom frame and a quit button on the bottom frame, which both are packed left, so they're side by side. We pack the 2 frames, and we have the main loop. Now the last piece of code is just like with the button, we'll have to have some kind of convert function. This is connected to the button itself, as you see right here. So when we do that, it'll convert it, and I use a message box here to actually show it to the screen. So when I use it, it'll do this right here. We'll say enter distance in kilometers, which is 1,000. And then it says 1,000 is equal to this. So that's how we use the input widget. So again, if I come over here, we've seen that before, we've seen it now. And what we're going to do actually is, if we want to, we can use that here. So we have this is a button. And I can come down here and I can say something like, let's put in here a middle frame. So we'll say self.middleframe. Like that, equals tk.frame self.mainWindow. And I can do something in the top frame with this as a button, and I can also do self dot, let's say self.input equals tk.entry, where it'll be the window it's in, so it's in the top frame. and the width of it is going to be equal to, let's say, 15. If I do self.input.pack, then we'll see if I run this now. We now have this as a button. We have an input field right here, and we have click me and quit. So if I type something in here, it click me, it says I clicked it, but we're not using that yet. So what we can do is we can come down here and say, you click the button, and then we can do \n, and then we do curly braces, dot format, and then we can use that entry. So we can use it by saying something like self.input.get, just like that. So if I run that now, and I type in, let's say, 100, it says you clicked it, like that. And, oh, I put it in the wrong spot. I put it on the title. We should probably put that on the you clicked it part here. And let's see, what am I missing here? Look at a quote here, comma. There we go. All right, so now we say you clicked it. We don't need a comma here. Now if I run this should be correct here. If I type it in here and I click this, it says you clicked it 1000, which is the number we put in. All right, so that's through an info box, but let's say we want to actually show it to the actual label instead of just having it in a pop-up box. So we can do that by using labels as output fields instead. To do this, what we need to do is we need to have something to hold the value that it's getting. So what we're going to use is we're going to use what's called a string var class, which is a string variable that Tkinter can use to hold user input data. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a string var object, and we're going to create a label widget and associate it with that string var object. As a result, any value stored in the string var will automatically be displayed in the label when we call that code. So for instance, if we're doing the kilo converter again, we have our top, middle, and bottom frames. We have our label. We have our entry right here. So that's just how we enter the information. We now have a description label, which is converted to miles, and a value. This is where we'll store the user input. And the label here, you see where it says text variable equals self.value. Whenever this value changes, it'll update what this label says. Again, the button's the same. We have calculations, but the button function now sets value to whatever it is in miles. So now that'll look like this, where we now say converts the miles to this here. So in practice, what we can do to show that is we have our top frame, we have our bottom frame. If I want to put something in the middle, let's say self.output description equals tk.label with self.middle frame. We'll say text here equals value, like that. And then I'll say self.value equals tk.string var. And then I'll do self dot, let's say, output value equals tk.label of self.middle frame, where text is not text anymore, but it's text variable, which is self.value. We'll go ahead and pack just the two widgets, which is this one and that one. So we'll do self.output description.pack. We'll do side equals left here. And we'll do self.outputValue.pack with side equals left here as well. Just like that. All right, so we go ahead and make sure we pack the middle frame as well. So we'll do middle frame.pack. Again, we don't have to do side equals top here because it's going to default to that. And now you'll see this empty gap right here where it says value. If I type in 1000 and I hit click me, it's going to put it here still because we did not change this line. So we can leave that pop-up box, but we can also do self.value.set that to self.input.get, like that. So if I run that now, I type in, let's say 1000, I hit OK, and now it says value 1000. If I don't want the pop-up box to show up, I can just go ahead and comment that line out. And if I run that now, every time I hit the button, it's going to change that value, just like that. So now that it pops up on the screen, it's going to stay there. It's consistent until we decide to change it. We hit quit and we can close it. So now we've talked about how we get input from the user, We talked about how we can output it to the actual message boxes. And now we've also talked about how we can output it to the labels as output fields. Okay, so with that being said, if I asked you how do you retrieve data from an entry widget, we can say it's by using the entry widget's get method. If I asked you when you retrieve data from an entry widget, what data type is it? You should be able to say the data you receive back is always a string type. If I ask you what module is the string var class in, you should be able to say it's in the tkinter module class. And when I ask you what can you accomplish by associating a string var object with a label widget, you should be able to say you can dynamically display the output directly to the GUI window. All right, so let's try this one together. Let's go ahead and write a GUI program that calculates a car's gas mileage, and then the programs, in that program's window, you should have an entry widget that lets the user enter the number of gallons of gas the car holds, the number of miles that can be driven on a full tank, and when you calculate an MPG button, when the actual button is clicked, the program should display the number of miles that the car may be driven per gallon. And when we're doing this, we'll use the following formula to calculate miles per gallon, which is, of course, miles divided by gallons. All right, so let's go over here to 13.3. Again, I have the exact same setup just like before, where I have just a really basic empty GUI. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just create the GUI window and resize it. So I already have that set, so let's go ahead and put that in real quick. So again, we have create our main window, we have our title, we have our geometry, but this time we'll do 600 by 300. And in this case, again, because we're gonna have inputs at the top, a button, and output, we'll need 3 frames. So we'll do self, we'll go ahead and create 3 frames. So we'll do self.top equals tk.frame, and we'll say self.mainWindow. We'll say self.middle equals tk.frame, self.mainWindow. And we'll do self.bottom equals tk.frame of self.mainWindow. Okay, so we have our 3 frames. Now, we're going to go ahead and build our top frame. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and build the top frame. Before we do that, let's go ahead and just start listening for events down here so we can see what we're doing. Listen for events. We'll do tk.mainLoop, just like that. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and build the top frame. And that's going to be self.gallonsLabel equals tk.label self.top. We'll say the text is going to be, not text variable, but text is going to be equal to enter the number of gallons of gas used. Okay, just like that. We don't need a space after that because it's not going to be just like an input before. We'll do self.gallons, gallon label.pack. We want it to be beside the other one, so we'll say side equals left. We'll say pad x equals 10. We'll say pad y equals 10. And we'll go ahead and copy this for the other one as well, but let's go ahead and make the entry first. We'll do self.gallons entry equals tk.entry. We'll say self.top. One will say width equals 10, like that. And then we'll go ahead and do the same kind of packing. So we'll just go ahead and grab this guy, same exact thing. And we'll just change this from gallons entry or gallons label to gallons entry. And we'll go ahead and copy all of this code so we can do the same thing for miles. So we'll change this from gallons label to miles label, just like that. And we'll change this from gallons entry to miles entry in these 2 spots as well. We'll enter the number of miles driven, like that, and then we're good to go. All right, so if I run this now, let me go ahead and actually pack these frames as well. So we'll pack the frames. So we'll do self.top.pack. We'll do self.middle.pack. We'll do self.bottom.pack, just like that. All right, so if I run this now, we're going to see that it's not really side by side and it's being dragged off the screen. So the reason why is because even though we want them to be up and down, they're still in the same frame. So what we can do to solve this is we can use what's called a subframe. So for the top frame, we're going to go ahead and create 2 subframes for the top frame. So we're going to say self.top1 equals tk.frame of self.top. So again, notice here, this frame up here was in the main window. This frame is going to be in the top frame. So we'll do self.top2 equals tk.frame of self.top, just like that. And we'll change these top two right here from top to top 1. And the bottom ones will change from top to top 2, just like that. And we need to make sure now that we also pack the top frame, the subframes as well. So we'll do self.pack, self.top1.pack, and we'll do self.top2.pack. Just like that. Go ahead and run that. And now we have what we want just like this. Okay? All right, so now that we have that, the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to build the middle frame. So we'll build the middle frame. And this one's where we're going to put the buttons. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is where we actually put the output first. So what we're going to do is we're going to do self.miles. Oop, not my, no, I'm sorry. Right. We're using the buttons here. So we'll do self.calc button. So we'll do btn equals, just like we did before, tk.button. And we'll do self.middle. The text here, not text variable, but text is going to be equal to calculate MPG. And then the command here is going to be self.calculate MPG. Now we don't have this written yet, but that's okay. We'll get to that in a second. We'll do self.calcButton.pack. And here we'll do side left. And we'll do padx 10 as well. All right, so we'll copy all this and do the second button for the quit button as well. So they change that from calc to quit. Change this from calc to quit, just like that. And we'll do, the command is now going to be self.mainWindow.destroy. And instead of calculating MPG, we're going to change the text to quit. Okay, just like that. All right, so now that we have that, if I run this now, you'll see, again, you see right here, we can't actually do that because we don't have that method yet. So we'll go ahead and build that method real quick. So we'll do def calculate, forgot to see, calculate MPG, not MPH, but MPG. And we'll just put pass here right now so we can go ahead and just look at this function. So this is where we're at. Again, this doesn't do anything because we're just passing. But again, we have the starting of our program. So the last thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and build the bottom one, which will have our output. So we'll build the bottom frame. We'll do self.output message equals tk.stringvar. Then we'll do self.output label equals tk.label, whereas self.bottom will have text variable in this case, which is our self.output message, like that. And then we'll do a self.output label.pack, like that. All right, so now that we have that, we have a spot to put our output at, which will be this actual string var. So when we come down here now, we can actually go ahead and grab this information. So if we do something like, let's say, we'll need to do a try and an except, because we're going to try to go ahead and get gallons equals float of self.gallonsentry.get. So that could crash because that's a string. If they don't put in a float, it will crash the program. And we'll do miles equals float of self.milesentry.get as well. All right, so then after we've gotten those two, we'll go ahead and calculate the MPG. So we'll say MPG equals the miles divided by the gallons. And then we can go ahead and do self.outputMessage.set. And in here, we can actually put the full text. So we'll say F, we'll use an F string, and we'll say miles per gallon is going to be MPG colon dot 2F to format it to 2 decimal places. And we're good right there. Now, if it does fail, what do we want it to do? Well, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to actually use those message boxes correctly. We'll do tm.showError, and we'll say invalid input, and we'll say please enter valid numbers, like that. And then we can go ahead and clear that output message so that there was no invalid output. So we'll do self.outputMessage.set, and we'll set it to nothing, just like that. All right, so if I run this now, we have everything in place. If I run this now, you now see we have all of this. And if I put in, let's say we used 10 gallons of gas to drive 300 miles, we now have miles per gallon is 30. If I say we drove using 10.12356 miles or gallons used, and we got that many miles, it's still only out to 2 decimal places. But if I put in the letter Q, it's going to say please enter a valid number, and that goes away because we reset it to an empty string. So the only way you're going to get good output is if you put something in and you get something like that. We can go ahead and hit quit, and the program's done. All right, so with that being said, what I want you guys to do is I want you to do the same thing, but I want you guys to go ahead and try to convert Celsius temperatures to Fahrenheit, doing the same thing. You'll only have one input label, one input to entry box. You'll have one convert button, one quit button, and then you'll have the output right below that as well. So go ahead and pause the video, give that a try on your own, and when you're ready, go ahead and unpause the video and we'll go over it together. All right, did you give that a shot on your own? Let's go ahead and go over it. So we'll go ahead and start again with a basic GUI. Again, nothing inside. We can go back to the previous one and grab that main window starting point again. That's not going to change. So we'll go ahead and change that, and we'll say this is a Celsius converter now. So we can say something like Celsius to Fahrenheit converter. In this case, we'll change this box to 400 by, let's say, 150. All right, so again, here we're going to create 3 frames. So we'll just go ahead and grab these ones again. So we have our 3 frames. And then we're going to go ahead and need to build the top frame. Well, guess what? Building the top frame is going to be very similar to this part right here. So we'll just grab this gallon entry again and paste it over. So we'll say build top frame. And instead of gallons label, it's going to be Celsius label. So we'll just say C label. Change that to C label. And we'll say C entry. And we'll say this is C entry as well. It's going to just be in top because we don't have a subframe in this case. And I'll say enter Celsius temperature, like that. And we can leave the padding and everything, that's fine. And now what we're going to need is we need to build the middle frame. So we'll go ahead and build the middle frame. And just like before in the previous one, we're also going to need these 2 buttons. So we'll go ahead and grab both of these as well. We'll go ahead and paste them in again. You'll notice a lot of this is repetitive. So we'll go ahead and change this calculate MPG to convert. And we'll change this to, instead of calculate MPG, we'll say this is convert temp. All that else stays the same. We can then go ahead and build the bottom frame. Here again, you'll see that this is going to be very similar to the other bottom frame. So we'll grab this part here. We'll paste that down here. And what we're going to do is we'll have our output message still. We'll have, I'll have our output label, just like that. But let's go ahead and change it up a little bit, and we'll do self.Fahrenheit label, like that, equals tk.label, self.bottom, and then we'll do text, not text variable, but just text, equals Fahrenheit temperature, like that. And then we'll go ahead and pack that with self.Fahrenheit label.pack with side going to left, just like that. And then we'll just have this one going side equals left as well. All right, so everything there is pretty much good. We just got to go ahead and pack the bottom frames. So we'll go ahead and grab these 3 packs because we don't have the subframes. So we'll come here, we'll go ahead and say pack the frames. And then we'll go ahead and grab the start listening as well. So you see most of this stuff is repeated. We just have to modify it slightly. All right, so now what we need is we just need to make sure we have our convert temp function. So we'll do def convert temp. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and get the actual Celsius string first. We'll say Celsius string equals self.Celsius or we'll say C entry.get. Then we'll say try. And in this case, we'll do Celsius CS equals Celsius string. And we'll put that in float. That. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and say Fahrenheit. We'll say Fahrenheit equals, we'll put parentheses here, put another parentheses, we'll do 9 divided by 5 times Celsius plus 32. That's the formula. And then we'll do self.output message.set the string of Fahrenheit plus quote space the degree sign F, which I have right here ready prepared. I'll grab those and I'll put that here. You can just put F if you want. I'll put mine there. And then we need to have an exception. So we'll say except, and we'll say tm.show error, and we'll say error, and we'll say invalid input. Please enter a number for Celsius temperature. Just like that. And we're done. That's all we need to do for this. Again, a lot of it's copied before from the same thing. So we'll go ahead and run it again. And we have our Celsius to Fahrenheit converter. We enter Celsius, we'll do 0. We hit convert, that's 32. If I say 100, we convert, and it's 212, which is correct. If I type in letter Q and hit convert, it says it can't do it. Now this is still here, so if we want to clear that, we can also do self.output message.set, just like we did before, to an empty string. If I run that now, and I do, let's say 100, gives us a valid output. If I say A, it's going to give us nothing right there. Okay? So that's how we do the Celsius converter. I hope that makes sense. What I want you guys to do now is just to really drive this point home is go ahead and try this one. So a county collects property taxes on the assessed value of the property, which is 60% of the property's actual value. So what this means is if an acre of land is valued at $10,000, its assessed value is $6,000, and the property tax is then 75 cents for each dollar of the assessed value. The tax for the acre is assessed at $6,000 will be $45. So write a GUI program that displays the assessment value and the property tax when the user enters the actual property value. So again, this is very similar. Again, what you'll have is again, your main window. You'll have top, middle, and bottom. The top frame is going to have you enter the actual inputs. The middle is going to be your calculate and quit. And your bottom one is going to be your assessment label and your actual property tax label as well. So go ahead and pause the video. Try it on your own again. See how far you get, and unpause the video when you're ready to go over this again. All right, did you give it a shot on your own? So let's go ahead and go over this one. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to, again, do the exact same thing again. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab all this information here to create the window, resize, and add a title. And we're going to go ahead and just paste that in. So in this case, it's not a converter, but this is a property tax calculator. So we'll say property tax calculator. And in this case, we're going to make this one a 500 by 100. This size, by the way, you'll just have to work with on your own and just figure out the size that works for you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create 3 frames again. Guess what? We're going to copy that again. We're going to paste that over, and we have our 3 frames. We're going to go ahead and copy this top frame part over again as well, because we're going to go ahead and make these labels. Instead of it being a C label now, we're going to have it as a value label. and a value entry. Okay, instead of entering Celsius temperature, we're going to say enter actual value of property. Just like that, we keep our padding the same. And then we're going to go ahead and grab these two buttons again as well. So again, this will be our calculate button. So we'll say convert. When change, we'll change convert to calculate again. And we have quit. And now instead of convert temperature, we're going to say calculate. We'll just say calculate to make it simple. All right, so we have our two buttons. Let's go ahead and build our bottom frame. Again, we're going to find a very similar story again. So we'll just go ahead and copy the rest of this, including the actual packing and the listening for events. All right, so now the only difference here is in this case, we want to output two values. We want to output the assessed value and the property tax as well. So how we're going to do this is we're going to go ahead and change the Fahrenheit label to the assess value label. And it's going to be the bottom. And in this case, it's going to say text is going to be saying the assessment value. We'll put a little dollar sign here to make sure it's a dollar sign. We'll go ahead and pack that just like that. And then down here, we're going to have the, instead of output message, we're going to have assess. Oh, make sure we have an extra S there. Make sure we copy this down here. Value var, like that. Make sure that's connected to the text variable here. And this one right here is going to be the assess value label result. So we'll say assess value result. Oop, like that. Say result, like that. And now we have those two. Now we need to do this again for the property text. So we'll copy all of that, and then we'll do it one more time, just like that. We'll put that in the bottom frame again, and we'll have assessment value, and then we'll have property tax. Change the assessment value here to property tax. We'll change that from assessed value to tax label. And then we'll have tax value var. And then we'll have tax value result. Just like that. We have our property tax, and we have our actual assessment value as well. So now all we need to do left is build this calculate function here. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and come down here to do a def calculate. And then here again, just like before, we'll do try. We'll do accept. And inside of the try, we're going to do value equals float of the assessment value. So we'll do self.assess value var. I'm sorry, the assessed value entry. So we'll say value entry. That's the one they gave us. Up here, that's the value entry. And we'll do dot get to get the value. And then we'll do assessment value. So we'll say assess value equals 0.6 times value. And then we'll say property tax equals the assessment value divided by 100 times the 0.75. And then we'll do self.assessment value var dot set. And here we'll do the actual curly braces with the colon dot to f. And we'll do dot format. And we'll say assessment value right there. And we'll do self dot property tax. So we'll just say tax var dot set. And we'll do the curly braces colon dot to f, like that. Dot format. And this is going to be the property tax here. So we'll set those two. And if there is any kind of exception, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and say tm.show error. Oop, we gotta actually import tm up here. Is that wrong actually? That's import statement's wrong. So we'll do import to enter message box as tm. So that. So we'll do tm.show error with invalid input. We'll say please enter a valid number for the property value. And if we want to, we can even go a step further and do self.assessValueVar.set it to an empty string, and we can do self.taxValueVar.set to an empty string. All right, so that's all we have to do again. Again, remember, all of this stuff is being really copy pasted because all of this stuff, there's recurring pieces. So if we run this now, you'll see we have our property tax calculator. If we enter, let's say, like the problem set over here, 10,000. So we'll say 10,000. We hit calculate. We have the assessed value of 6,000 and the property tax is 45. If let's say the property value is, let's say, 260,000, we hit calculate, and now you're looking at an assessed value of 156,000 and a property tax of 1170. If I hit A, hit convert, it throws an error and it turns those two off. All right, so if I hit quit now, it closes it. But that's how you're going to use the actual inputs and outputs with actual Tkinter. So at this point in the actual class, we've gone over the actual labels, we've gone over buttons, we've gone over message boxes, we've gone over inputs, we've gone over outputs, and we've gone over how you can actually use the labels as outputs as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to radio buttons and check buttons. So just like we were doing before, these will be widgets, and in particular with the radio buttons, they're going to be just like you would think. They're just small circles that appear filled in when you're selected and empty when deselected. So these are very useful when you want the user to select only one choice from several possible choices. And to do this, we're going to use Tkinter's radio button class, right? Now, when we do this, radio buttons are mutually exclusive, so only one can be selected at a time. And the way this is going to work is that we're going to use the intvar class, a singular one, to actually determine which radio button is selected. To do this, we're going to associate a group of radio button widgets with the same intvar object, and we're going to assign a unique integer to each radio button. And when a radio button widget is selected, the unique integer is stored in the intvar object. So this can be used. We can also set this intvar to actually select the default radio button, choosing one of the unique values. So radio buttons can also be used to actually have a callback function, just like a regular button, so that when we click it, something else occurs. And in particular, the steps for use with a radio button is we're going to provide an argument with command equals method to the radio button, just like we would do with a regular button. And the command will execute when the radio button is selected. And this replaces the need for a user to click OK or submit before determining which radio button is selected. So here's an example of just a small example of how radio buttons work. You have your intvar right here. You set it to initial value, which is one of the two values that we have here. We have our first radio button, our second radio button, and we pack them both, and we have the rest of the GUI. We can then access this radio var by doing .get on that, and we'll return an int back for us as well. Moving on, we also have our check buttons, which is just the same thing, but a small box with a label that appears next to it, and a check mark indicates whether it's selected or not. These are not mutually exclusive, and they allow the user to select any or all of the check boxes that are displayed in a group. And these are created using the Tkinter's check button class. Now to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to associate a different intvar object with each of the check button widgets. And if that intvar is a 1, that means that check button was selected. And if it's a 0, the check button was not selected. So here's another example of it. We have two intvars. We set them both to 0 first because neither of them are selected. We have our two check buttons, and we pack them. If we want to check to see if it's selected, we just check the two vars. If they're 1, that check button was actually selected. If it's a 2, if it's a 0, it's not selected. All right, so going on here, we'll see an example of this here in a second. But how can we actually associate an intvar object to determine which radio button has been selected in a group of radio buttons? To do this, we're going to associate an intvar with a group of radio buttons and give each button a unique value. When a radio button is selected, the unique integer is stored in the intvar. Similarly, we can use an intvar to determine whether a check button has been selected by associating a different intvar with each check button. And if the check button is selected, the intvar will be equal to 1. And if the check button is not selected, the intvar will be equal to 0. So the big point here is understanding that when with radio buttons, they all use the same intvar, and when using a check button, they use the different intvars each one. All right, so let's try this one together. So Joe's Automotive Shop performs the following maintenance services. They have oil changes, lube jobs, radiator flushes, transmission flushes, inspections, muffler replacements, and tire rotations. We're going to go ahead and write a program with a check button that allows the user to select any or all of these services. When the user clicks a button, the total charges should be displayed. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the check boxes because they can check any or all of these. So we come over here, again, we have the basic class, just like we did before. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to take, just like we did, we're going to take the starting point here where we have the window and creating it. We'll grab all that, put that right here. And in this case, it's going to be called, come up here, and we'll call it Joe's Automotive Shop or Services. All right, this one's going to be a 500 by 300. And what we're going to do with this one is we're going to create first a dictionary of all the services and prices. So I already have this done. So again, pause the video and copy this yourself. But I'm going to go ahead and paste this here, and this is all the services we have. So we have our oil change with the price that's going to be displayed, the amount for it, the lube job, the price, and then the amount for it, and so on all the way down. And now that we have those, we can use those to actually build the checkboxes. So to start, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead back over here and create our 3 frames just like we did before. So those are our 3 frames. And then we're going to go ahead and build the top frame, which will have all of our checkboxes. Now the way we're going to do this is we're going to go ahead and first create a list. Since we have multiple check intvars to keep track of, we're going to create a list of them so that we're all in one spot. And we're going to create one for each checkbox. Now a shorthand notation to do this will be self.checkvars equals a list. Now it's not going to be an empty list because we want to have a list of empty intvars for each one. So we're going to do tk.intvar, but we want to take this and repeat this process for I in range of len of self.services, which is our dictionary. Now you'll notice here this I is actually grayed out because we're not actually using it. So we can go ahead and replace it with an underscore, which is the proper syntax in Python because we're not actually using it. All right, so now this is going to create a list of the same length as self.services of tk.intvars. And after that, we're going to go ahead and create and pack a checkbox for each service. Now, when we have a lot of the repetitive widgets, what we can do is we can actually just go ahead and use a for loop to create them. We can do count equals 0. We say for key in self.services.keys. So that's all these keys right here. We want to create a widget for all of those. We're going to say chk equals tk.checkButton with self.top. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and say text equals the key that we're looking at. So it's going to be oil change, it's going to be this string, then this string, and so on down. Then we're going to say the variable for it is equal to self.checkvars of count. So whichever one we're on. And then down here, we'll go ahead and do count plus equals 1. So we'll just iterate through them. And we need to make sure we pack them. So we'll do chk.pack. We'll do the pad x equals 10, the pad y equals 5, and we'll do the anchor equals w, which you'll see in a second, but it's just going to organize the actual checkboxes for us as well. All right, so now that we have that, we'll go ahead and build the middle frame. We'll do self.calc button, but again, if you remember, we already have these, so we'll come back over here. We'll go ahead and grab our calc button. Grab our quit button. And what we can do is we can actually copy one of these and also make a clear button. Because when we're dealing with multiple check buttons, it's nice to actually have a clear option that'll clear all them out for the user. So we'll do a calculate, we'll do a clear. This will be called clear. Just like that. And we have all those. All right. So we can go ahead and build the bottom frame now. And in this case, all we want to do is make sure we have one output. So what we'll do is we'll grab one of these outputs right here, just like we did before. We'll paste this down here. We have our label, which is going to be the actual value. So we'll say total, just like that. We have our string var right here. And we can give it an initial value here, actually. And we'll give it the value of 0.00, just like that. And then we have our label right there for the actual value. So what we're going to do is we're going to change these from assess value to just value label, value label, value var, value results, and value results. Make sure you change the assess one over here as well, and now we're good. All right, so that's all we have to do, and make sure we also have our main loop, so we'll make sure to copy that last one, and make sure we pack the frames as well. So grab all that, and put that right down below. All right, so now we have our code. So this code is good. All we have to do now is make the function. So we'll do def calculate. We'll just make sure it works first. We'll do def clear, and we'll make sure it works. Okay, so now that we have that, we'll go ahead and run it. And now we have a nice checkbox set up where we have all of these. The only thing we're missing now is we didn't pack the clear one. So we'll go ahead and change that real quick, because we didn't change this one right here. And now that we now have a clear button as well. Okay, so now we work on the actual functionality. Once the actual GUI is built, we can work on the functionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the calculate total, or the calculate function here. I'm going to say amount equals 0. And then we'll do count equals 0, just like we did before. And we'll say for value in self.services.values. Like that. And then we'll say self.checkvars of count.get, which gives us back the 0 or 1, is equal to 1, which means it was selected. Then we'll do amount plus equals value. We'll also go ahead down here and make sure we do count plus equals 1. And then lastly, what we'll do is we'll make sure we come down here and we'll do self.total, or should I say the actual value var, dot set, and that's going to be equal to the curly braces of, inside there we'll do :.2f, do dot format, the amount, just like that. All right, now when we do clear, what we're going to do is we're going to do for item in self.checkvars, like that. We'll then say item.set 0, so we turn each of those checkboxes off. And we can also do self.valuevar.set back to the 0.00, just like that. Okay, so once we have that done, that's all we have to do. Again, a lot of this is copy paste, a lot of it's repetitive stuff. The biggest differences to this time is we have a dictionary of the services and the prices. We made a list of checkvar widgets with the int vars. We use a for loop to create that many check buttons that we needed. And then we also have a clear button. That's the only differences that we made here. So if I run this now, you'll see we have everything where we need it at. So if I say oil change and hit calculate, you'll say 30. If I hit clear, it goes back to 0. If I do all of them, it's 445. If I take off 200, it's 245. If I clear it, 0 again. So this is exactly what we want. Now, what we could do is we could actually make this different as well by actually putting the command on each of the check buttons as well. So let's do that. So if we come up here to check buttons, we have text, we have variable, and we can also do command, just like that. And we can do self.calculate here as well. And if we run that now, every time we click a check button, it's now going to add that to the total. So we don't actually need to have a calculate button, but again, it may be nice to actually have that option for the user if you want that. Otherwise, you can see it's a running total that will change as we switch through them. So just like the radio button, the check buttons also have a command with a command option as well. All right, so with that being said, again, you don't really need to have the calculate button if you want to do the actual command right here. But that actually covers the actual automotive shop and how to use radio buttons. All right, so what I want you guys to do is I want you to try this yourself. So this is going to be for the radio buttons, but again, the radio buttons work very similarly to the check buttons, except for you have one int var instead of multiple. What I want you guys to do is I want you to pause the video and create a calculator GUI, that program that enables the user to add, subtract, divide, and multiply two numbers. So your GUI program should have two entry widgets at the top, one for one number, one for the other. And it should also have radio buttons for addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Once a radio button is chosen and the two numbers entered, the user should be able to click a calculate button that uses an info dialog box to display the results. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, give this one a shot on your own, and after you guys are done, go ahead and unpause it and we'll go over it. All right, were you able to get that done on your own? So if not, let's go ahead and go over this. So again, this time we're going to be going over the calculator GUI right here. And in this case, again, it's going to be very, very similar to that of the actual the check buttons that we just did. So the first thing we'll do is we'll grab all of that first stuff again. We'll bring that over. And now instead of automotive shop, it's going to be the calculator. And this one's going to be a 500 by, let's say, 250. All right, so in this case, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have the two entries at the top. Maybe we want a label on top of that. So we have a label, like a title, two entries. We then have the actual radio buttons. We have the other buttons to actually calculate. Excuse me. And then we have the outputs. So with that being said, we're going to need 5 frames this time. So we'll go ahead and create the 5 frames. So in this time, we'll just go ahead and call them self.frame0 equals tk.frame of self.mainWindow. And we'll copy that for all 5. So 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll change all these from frame 0 to frame 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 5 frames. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start by building frame 0. And in this case, we want to actually title. So if we go back to one of the previous ones we had, let's say like the celebrity one here, we had a title. So we'll go ahead and grab that same title. And again, this is the benefit of having old code that you can look at. And we'll paste that there. So instead of being for, let's say, Bill Murray's, this will be for frame 0. And this one's just going to be, let's say, basic calculator. Like that. If we go ahead and put in the actual listening loop right here, we can actually watch this as this is actually being built. So we can put that right there. And we can go ahead and pack all the frames now at the bottom. So pack each frame. We can do self.frame0.pack. We can do self.frame1.pack. We can do self.frame2.pack. Do self.frame3.pack. And we do self.frame4.pack. All right, so with that being said, we should be able to just go ahead and run this just to see where we're currently at. And we have basic calculator at the top. All right, so now that we have that, we'll go ahead and build frame 1 now, which is the second frame, since we're starting at 0. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and do our inputs. So we had a previous one where we actually had 2 inputs, and that would be, let's find it real quick, be 13.3, where we had the number of gallons and miles driven. So we'll grab both of those. We'll go ahead and put them over here. And instead of gallons, we're going to basically say label 1. And we'll say label 1 right here. And then we'll have entry 1. We'll have entry 1 right here. Then we'll have label 2. And we'll have, let's say, label 2 right here. And then we'll have entry 2. And then we'll have entry 2 right here as well. So again, we're just modifying the code we had before to work for this. Wherever we see top 1, we'll change that with frame 1 and all of these, because we want them beside each other. So we'll just do all those right there. And then we'll have enter first number. And then we'll have enter second number. Like that. And let's see, the padding should be good there. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like now. We'll go ahead and run that. And now we have first and second. We're a little bit off. So what we can do is we can actually remove that X padding on all of these. Keep the Y padding, but we'll remove the X padding. We'll run that now. Now everything's in the actual box right there. Okay, so we have the first number and we have the second number. All right, so with that being said, we now have our 2 entry points for our 2 numbers. So we can go ahead and move on to building frame 2, which will actually be for our radio buttons. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start by making a singular operation. So we'll say op var equals tk dot string var. So we can do a string var, we can do int var. So let's go ahead and do int var for this one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do self dot op var equals, let's just set it to, or let's say do it dot set to 0. Okay. Then we're going to do self dot add btn equals tk dot radio button self dot frame 2, wrong frame 2. We'll have text equals a plus sign, and then the variable will be self dot opvar, like that. And the value in this case will be, let's just set it equal to 1, like that. All right, so then we'll go down here, we'll copy and paste this a few times. So we'll have one for add, and one for subtraction, multiplication, and division. And that'll be values 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. And we'll say this add, sub, last one's divide, third one's multiplication. All right, so now we have our radio buttons just like that. And all of them are connected back to the same opvar, which is the int var here. And we can move on from there. All right, so we also have to pack each of those. So we'll go ahead and grab, let's say, this pack command just for example, and we'll come down here. And we'll change this to add button.pack side left. And in this case, we'll actually add back the pad x because they're going to be close to each other. We'll do 5, and pad y is going to be equal to 10. So we can grab that and repeat that process for all 4 of them. So we'll add, we'll do sub, we'll do mul, and then we'll do divide. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and test it again to see where we're at. And now we have a button for add, subtract, multiplication, and division, just like that. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and build the next frame, which is frame 3. And in this case, we're going to do the same thing we did before. So we'll go ahead and copy directly the calc, clear, and quit buttons from the previous one. We keep those exact same names. Everything on that one is going to say the exact same. The only difference is we'll say frame 3 instead of middle. Just like that. And everything else stays the same. All right, and we can go ahead and now move down to building frame 4. Just like that. And we'll have self.output label. So just say output label equals tk dot, and if you notice, before we actually go any further, these results are very similar to this result right here. So we'll just go ahead and grab that again. Why reinvent the wheel? Let's go ahead and grab that, paste that there. So now we'll say result, it's not a $, so we'll just get rid of that. This will be in frame 4, which is the final frame. And this will be in the frame 4, which is also the final frame. And we'll have our value var just like that. And let's see, something is missing. I'm missing one parenthesis right here. There we go. All right, and we go ahead and we'll add a pad y here, like that. And we'll set that to 10. And you know what? Let's go ahead and actually make this font for this label even bigger. So we'll set this to Arial again with a font size of 25. And then let's come down here. So we have our var result, and we'll change that one from just basic as well to a font size of, let's say, Arial again with a font size of, let's say, 15. Or we can actually, no, we'll do 15 for both. So we'll do 15 there and 15 there. All right, so everything is good. The only thing, again, we're missing is these clear and calculates. So we can come down to the very bottom, and we'll go ahead and build the calculate one first. So we'll do def calculate. And in here, we're going to say try, and we'll say accept. And we'll say num1 equals the float of self.entry1.get, and num2 equals float of self.entry2.get. And then we'll say operator equals self.opvar.get. Then we can say if operator equals 1. We're going to do addition. So we'll say result equals num1 plus num2. Elif operator equals 2. Elif operator equals 3. Elif operator equals 4. So if it's 2, it's subtraction. So we'll say result equals num1 minus num2. Here we'll say result equals num1 times num2. And here we'll say result equals num1 divided by num2, just like that. All right, now if there isn't one of those, we'll say else, which means that one wasn't actually made. And we can do what's called raising our own exception. So we'll raise a value error like that. And then we'll have except, we'll say value error, like that. So we'll raise an exception and we'll accept one there, and we'll do tm.show. We need to import it up here correctly. This is wrong again. We'll do import synchinter.messagebox as tm. That's the way I prefer to do it. We'll do tm.show error. And we'll say error, and we'll just say invalid inputs selected. All right, so then at that point, if it works, we'll come down here and we'll say self.out. Specifically, if you come up here, we have the value var. .set the string of result, like that. And if this does raise an error, we'll do self.valueVar.set to string of 0. And we can come up here and we'll change that 0 from 0.0 to just 0.0. And we'll just actually make this a string here, just like that. All right, so if everything goes according to plan, the result will be there. And the last one we need is our clear one again. So we'll do def clear. And in this one, we're going to go ahead and delete actually the entries. So when you want to clear out an entry, what you need to do is you need to do self.entry.delete. And it's going to be a range. So you're going to do 0 to the word end. So it deletes the entirety of it. We'll do entry2.delete 0 to end, just like that. Then we'll do self.output value, which is the actual value var in this case. We'll do .set that to 0.0 again. And then we'll do self.opvar.set, and we'll set that to 0. All right, so now that we have that, both those functions that we needed are done. And if we stop this and run it one more time, you'll see everything is basically is set up. If we do, let's say, 5 and 10, but we don't click on one of these, we hit calculate, it's going to say invalid inputs, and it's going to clear that out. It's going to clear out this, it's going to clear out the result. If I do plus and hit calculate, it's 15, minus is -5, times is 50, and divide is 0.5. If I hit clear, it clears out everything just like that. Okay? So again, it's only doing the exception with setting it to 0 because we do that. If I want to do all of those at the same time, I can copy these two, paste them up here. So what that'll do now is if there's any issues, then it will reset the entire thing. So what that means is if I come over here and I do 5, 10, calculate, but I don't choose one of these, it'll say invalid and everything is cleared. If I do 5Q plus, it's invalid. It'll clear everything again. So these are the options you have. Clear is going to clear everything. If you do an error, it clears everything again. And then we quit. So that's how we're going to go ahead and make a basic calculator. Again, if you notice, all the radio buttons are selected back to the op var right here, which holds an int. We use that int then to determine what operation we're on. And then if we don't have that operator selected, we just raise a value error, which comes down here. All right, so now we know how to use radio buttons and checkboxes. So the last thing we can do now that I'm going to show you guys is actually how to draw stuff on the actual canvas with the actual widgets. So the canvas widget is a blank rectangular area, and it's just like the turtle. It allows you to just draw 2D shapes. You use it like a coordinate system, so just imagine yourself with a pen drawing it on the paper. The coordinates of the pixels in the upper left corner of the screen are 0, 0. So for instance, right here, that's 0, 0. This is 319, 239, and this is 639 and 479. And there's many different functions you can use with a canvas. So this is how you build a basic canvas right here with the height and width. And then if you want to go ahead and draw things, you can create lines, rectangles, ovals, arc, polygons, and text. Okay, so for instance, if you want to draw a line, you can do your canvas name. Again, we came up here, or it will be self.canvas. So we could do self.canvas.createLine. And this create line would be, again, the points you want, so your x and y, followed by x and y, followed by optional arguments as well, which is like things like fills and outlines as well. So example of that would be seen right here, where we draw two lines from 0, 0 to 199, 199. And then 199, 0 to 0, 199, which makes an X across the entire box. Moving on, we can also look at rectangles, and we can create rectangles using the exact same thing where you have the upper left, lower right, and you keep going. So for instance, if we wanted to do that, the upper left here would be 20, 20, and the lower right would be 180, 180. It's basically you drag a rectangle, so you have the 2 points. If we wanted to draw an oval, we could do that the same thing. It's the upper left of the bounding box and the bottom right. So it's not on the oval, but it's basically if you selected a box around it. So to see how that would work here, we have 2020s right here and 77 is right here. It's not actually on the oval, but it's where these two tangents meet on this circle. That's 2020, and then the two chances of this side would be 70, 70. Here it would be 100, 100 right here. And then we have 180, 30 right here. Okay, moving on, we also can make arcs. So the arcs here will be the upper left and the lower right, so it's like you're drawing an oval. And then you have the start angle, which is like you could choose where to start, and the extent on how far you want it to go. So that right here will look like this, where we can say we start at 10, 10, so the full oval would start at 10, 10 right here, and we'll go to 190, 190 down here. But we'd start at 45 degrees, which would be this starting point right here, and it draws a counterclockwise extent 30, so it draws it 30 back and makes an arc like that. Okay, moving on, we can also draw just general polygons by doing the first vertex, second vertex, and so on, and going all the way around. So here you can see we have a first point, second point, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. And when you do your eighth one, the last one here, which is 2060, as you can see right here, that will then automatically create or close the polygon based on the first and last point. So here you can see we have a polygon right here, and it creates that basic polygon through all those points. And then we also have our text on canvas. So if we want to get the coordinates, the text, and any optional arguments, so here we can say we have the position of the center of the text, which is 100, 100. And we want it to say hello world, so it puts hello world right there in the middle. So again, there's many different options for just drawing text on canvas, just like with the turtle. Again, there's a lot of different options, so I'm not going to sit here and cover all of them, but just keep in mind you can look into that. So what I want you guys to try to do now, using the actual create polygon function, I want you guys to go ahead and make your own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And I want you to write a program that displays a star similar to the one shown in figure 13.4.3, which basically is just a 5-point star. And I want you to go ahead and display your name on the star. So go ahead and try this, pause the video. Again, you're going to be using the draw a polygon one right here. The example would be this right here. So you just get all the points you want for it. And then go ahead and run that and use the draw text right here to put your name in the middle. So go ahead and give that a shot on your own. And when you're ready to see how it's actually done, go ahead and come back and we'll go over it together. All right, did you give that a shot on your own? So let's go ahead and go over it. So this one, again, is not supposed to be difficult. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to do self.mainWindow equals tk.tk. We're going to do self.mainWindow.title. We'll say star. We'll say Hollywood star or Walk of Fame star. Then here we'll do our canvas. We'll do self.canvas equals tk.canvas like that. We'll self.mainWindow. The width of it will be, let's say 400. and the height will be 400 as well. And then we'll do self.canvas.pack, just like that, to make sure it's on the screen. And now we actually have to draw our star. So we'll do star points right here. We'll make a list of tuples. And these tuples will be the values 200, 100. We have another set of values for 250, 200. We then have another set of values for 350, 200. Then we have another set of values for 275, 275. Then we have another set of values for 325 and 375. Then we have another set of values for 200, 300. Then we have another set of values for 75, 375. And we can keep going on to 125, 275. And then we got another one for 50, 200. And then lastly, we have 150, 200. All right, so that's our star points, and we'll see that here in a second. And what we can do is we can just go ahead and pass that to the polygon one. So we can do self.canvas.create polygon. We'll just pass our star points to that. And then we can go ahead and fill that with gold. And then we can also go ahead and do an outline, which is black. Oops, sorry. Outline is black, like that. And then we can go ahead and put our text in the middle. So we'll do self.canvas.create text, which will be at the spot of 200, 250. And the text will be whatever your name is. So just put your name. You can place that with your name. And the font in this case will be, again, Arial 25. And the fill in this case will be black, so it looks good off the gold background. Okay, and if we go ahead and down here and do tk.main loop, we'll see our Hollywood star. Let's go ahead and run that. And there you go. So you now have your 5-point star with your name in the middle, and there's your Hollywood Walk of Fame star. All right, so at this point we've covered what a graphical user interface is and the roles as event-driven programs. We've covered the Tkinter module, including creating a GUI window, adding widgets to a GUI window, organizing widgets in a frame, receiving inputs and providing outputs using widgets, creating buttons, check buttons, and radio buttons, as well as drawing simple shapes with the Canvas widget. I hope all this made sense to you guys. Again, Tkinter is a useful Python module that can be used if you have any kind of a sophisticated Python program you want the logic to be handled through a GUI. Otherwise, again, it's just a fun thing to toy around with as well. At this point, that's the guy covers pretty much all of the introduction to Python. So congratulations, you've gotten through the introduction to Python, and I will see you guys in the next lecture.